Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Noriega. I am the professor of graphic design with the Art and Design Department here at Troy University. And before I introduce our guest, what I'd like to do is share something that's very special about today, or about right now what's happening. The audience was very carefully selected. As a matter of fact, we only invited 3 disciplines plus first-year students, and those disciplines are comprised of business students, art and design students, and arts and science students. And we felt that this was really important because we do feel that the world that you're all going to be going into is not going to be a world by itself of one discipline. It's going to be a multidisciplinary world. So the people that are in this room are actually, in fact, people that you are potentially going to be collaborating with, working with, and sharing and creating ideas with, which is what brings these people to today to Troy to talk to you. And I'm so proud, and I want to give you a little bit of a background with the guests that are going to be presenting to you. First of all, I want to introduce to you Mr. Dustin Gibson. Mr. Gibson is an astrophotographer, he's an artist, he's an astronomist, he's an entrepreneur, a researcher, and also, in my mind, a philosopher. He is working with organizations in the area of transforming astronomy and photography. He's served as CEO of Oceanside Photo and Telescope, which is one of the largest telescope retailers in the world. He's currently co-founding 2 new enterprises. One is called Radian Telescopes, and the other one I'm going to ask him to talk about today is a new business a new entity that he's starting with some very exciting people, a business called rsky.ai. Dustin has worked and assisted with a variety of institutions. To name a few, they include NASA, JPL, MIT, and now Troy University. I believe this man is living on the edge of tomorrow. This man, in my mind, in my estimation, is a pioneer. He is a risk taker. He is a person that has become not only a good friend of mine, but a good friend to the university. I could honestly say that I believe that one of the passions he has is being able to not only transform the field of photography and astronomy, but to transform the lives and minds of young people such as yourselves. So we're in for a real treat, and I think the only thing I'd like to ask of you is just keep an open mind. He has asked to keep this informal. There's not going to be a slide presentation, although there will be some slides. He's also asked me to kind of just come up with some thoughts and show him the slides so that he could just react to it. So he doesn't have a prepared speech. And then on top of that, we have our good friend Cathrin Machin, who happens to be her birthday today. Happy birthday, Kat. And Cathrin, I'm not going to be as extensive as going through her background, and I'm going to ask her to do that just a little bit. But ultimately, I want you to know that her background is in engineering, her academic background, and now she is a fine artist. And I'd love for them to hear, she is probably the only artist that is not starving. She has a wait list of people that are waiting to own her work. She doesn't even show in galleries. What she does is she'll call up Elon Musk and say, I've got a piece, do you want it? And she will select who collects her art. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So we're very fortunate to have both Dustin and Kat with us. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Kat and to Dustin.
Thank you. I'm not sure I deserved like 10% of that introduction, and certainly Kat does. I mean, she is the world's highest funded space artist anywhere, and has done incredible work and found a way to thread the needle between art and business, which, if any of you in here are doing art, you know is a super challenge. It's very, very difficult, and so I definitely want to make time to talk about that some. And the rest of it, so actually I will make one correction. Radian was an older business. It's one that's already already sailed, great company and a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm not really a traditional science pursuing type of person. In fact, I've talked about this at length, but I feel the pressure a lot. I give a lot of talks. I've given some very large scale talks, including things like TEDx events and stuff like that. And because of my position as the former head of what was the world's largest telescope company, it always felt like this pressure to be an evangelist for the science, right? And the problem is, and I really do, I want to step here and say, like, step carefully here, is that the science is what makes it all possible. The science is the important piece. It is, in most things, it is what makes all of this worthwhile doing and, secures our place as relevant in the universe. It's the only chance in a lot of ways that we can look at this to have a piece of that relevance. But it's not something that I'm super passionate about. Generally, when I see like the new science articles, it's like, for me, it's clickbait. I'll click on it, I'll read it, but it's not something I'm going to spend the rest of my day searching through and really pursuing. For the people that do, those people generally have, I'm amazed all the time by the people. I work with scientists, I work with astrophysicists on a daily basis, and it's incredible. I'm truly astonished at what they're capable of. And I think that for those of you that have an interest, it really is something that you should consider because it's the deepest rabbit hole in the world. Physics specifically, astrophysics specifically. It's completely unexplored. We know almost nothing. We only know that we know almost nothing. And so it's wide open to anybody that wants to do it. It's just, again, not what really gets me excited in the morning to go out. I'm more of a philosophy junkie. I always have been. And I'm the type of person that just wants to do a bunch of things. And so from the beginning, I did that. I've had a lot of different careers, including, I worked with professional athletes and bodybuilders. I thought that was going to be my life. And, went a completely different route, sold everything I could, moved out to learn about telescopes just because I looked through a telescope one time. And after looking through one, I don't know if anybody in here seen through one, but it can be life-changing in a very real way. I mean that quite literally. After looking through it and seeing what you see, you can't unsee it. It changes from being like, in my mind, what was like the moon, for instance, is like this thing in a textbook, right? But then after that, it's a place. Now I'm seeing it this close. I can see all the craters, I see everything, and it's like something switched that I couldn't unswitch, which was I'm no longer somebody that has an academic understanding of this thing. I'm now a tourist of it. There's no difference than me looking through binoculars at the Eiffel Tower. I just became a tourist. I'm just a cosmic tourist. And so something switched that was really, really, like for me, it was life-changing, and that I knew like I couldn't go back to what I was before that moment. And so I rerouted my entire life to go that direction. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But I want to say, like, the one thing he was spot on about, this is going to be incredibly informal. Please interrupt me. Kat, you do the same. Please jump out, say whatever you want. If you have any questions, do it. I don't like some of the traditional models, especially in talks of like slide presentations, because I get bored easily, and that stuff bores me, and I don't want to do it. So I don't want you to do it either. So if you want to say something, say it. If you have questions, just say them. We can go whatever direction we want. I haven't even seen the slides today. Intentionally, I asked Ed to just put them together. We talk about wherever this goes, but the entire intent is to derail in the hope that we find something meaningful. So let's derail intentionally. If we have questions that might be meaningful, let's talk about them, right? But that's kind of where this is. So I'm going to be learning this talk for the first time today with you. I got a feeling, I know Ed well enough to know, Ed's a good friend of mine, and I know there's going to be some things on here that are a little uncomfortable, but that should be fun too. So before, you want to jump into the first slides and just kick it off? Or
I'll do a quick introduction. I came into space, I actually started as an engineer because I was desperately trying to avoid being an artist, which is ironic given that that's what I do full time, because I was always told that if you're an artist, you're going to be starving. So I went into engineering because it was the least artistic thing I could think of. And then I just realized that it just wasn't for me. I was deeply unhappy. And I was like, I need to sort something out. As a kid, my brother and sister are 8 and 10 years older than me, and they'd always ask my parents for money, and they'd always complain to me because I was too small to ask. And it made me realize I have to be successful in something. But I knew it wasn't engineering. So I moved into doing video games. I made video games for 15 years, started as a special effects artist and ended up as an executive producer managing 600 people doing all sorts of different games, but like I did like SingStar and Guitar Hero and lots of Warhammer, if anyone's into that stuff. You're the right kind of nerd. But I realized that the problem was I knew I was unhappy because I refused to call myself an artist. So I was like, I'm going to get to the top of the ladder and maybe I'll be happy. But what happened was that I just became incredibly stressed and I was still unfulfilled. So I left. After I launched my game, we won some awards, but it meant nothing to me because ultimately every single one of you is going to have a moment in your life, if not already, but you're going to be like, is this all that's ever going to be my life? Like I was working 16 hours a day on a project that wasn't feeling fulfilling, and I had to sleep under my desk one night because I was just too tired to drive and I was going to kill myself on the road. And I remember being woken up by the cleaning person. They were vacuuming up and I just like woke up and I had like crumbs and rubbish on my face, and I just had this like, this has got to stop. And if you ever have like a nervous breakdown like that, best thing that could ever happen, if you can schedule one in early, it means you can redirect sooner. But the truth is that you just have to realize that when those things happen, it's a line in the sand. You either carry on where you're going or you go somewhere else. And I'd realized that deep down in me, I'd always wanted to be an artist. And at this point, I felt like, damn, I have lost 20 years of my life to doing this mission that is not me, because I was just trying to be something and trying to avoid failure. But actually, that was the failure. I went into doing all sorts of things. I just tried everything. I actually started a company as a cleaner, and I was like scrubbing people's toilets. And I did what made me happy was on the side, I was just painting pictures of space, because honestly, to me, space is so beautiful. Like you look at a sunset, it's nice, but you look at the stars. If any of you have ever gone out to a dark sky night, it's insane. Like what you get in a city, you see nothing. This is the first time in like 100 years where people live, like most of you, if you haven't seen the Milky Way, you're literally the first generation, or like first of 2 generations to have never seen it. Everyone else grew up going outside, seeing all those stars. And when I tell you they cast shadows when you're in a dark sky, it is insane. It's like, it does something to you. And I wanted to bring that to everyone. It was like soul changing. So I started painting, and I was terrible. I actually sucked so bad. Like I was really horrible, but I just loved it, man. I didn't care. And for me, I'd already failed at everything, so why bother, you know? So I just did the thing I was passionate about, and my friend said, hey, you know, you should have an exhibition. And I thought, damn, this sounds good, because to me, it just sounded like filling a room with space and alcohol and having a party. So I was like, let's do it. And I decided I'd start a Kickstarter. I was 8 months out of a high-paying executive job, and I was like, I've got to make something of this. So what I did was I started a Kickstarter. It was 8 months of just little bits of prep. I just did like on the side. I painted every Saturday. It was whatever time I could get. And then after 8 months, I'd compiled some pictures. Most were absolute trash, honestly, but there was 2 or 3 that were okay. And I just set out to raise $4,000. I thought, you know what, that's enough to fill a room with space and maybe a little bit of alcohol. We'll have a good time, you know? And I was like, what's the worst that could happen is probably my friends would say stay sober at that point, and there's probably been worse things that they've done. But I was like, let's just do it anyway. And I'd never sold a piece of artwork. I was physically sick before I launched it. But as soon as I launched it, people could just see the passion because they knew it was what I was meant to be, not what I was trying to avoid not being. Do you know what I mean? And it kept on raising. We hit $4,000 on the first day. And it was 30 days. And we were having this conversation, me and the neighbors. I was like, where is it going to end? I was like, I don't know, 10,000? No, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000? At the end of 30 days, we hit $70,000. And I was like, whew, I can't believe that that was a thing. I'd been told my whole life that artists were failures. But the truth is that when you find your thing and you're passionate about it, people want to be part of it just because of your pure passion. You know what I mean? So my thing is here, whatever it is, embrace it. But for me, space was what it was. And I just didn't realize that you could, I'd always watched, you know, the Cosmos series and seen these beautiful pictures of NASA. I never thought that I could take those photos, you know, and I wasn't deeply technical, even though I did an engineering degree. It was mostly math, and I was not very good at it, in fairness. Whatever, it's fine. You know, you'll find your path eventually. After that, I thought that was such a fluke. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go back to being a waitress because there ain't no way that that's a real thing. It's not sustainable. So I did that, and I was like, again, I was like, damn, this sucks. Like, I need to really try that. I want some of that Kickstarter money, but 70,000 was like absolutely unattainable. You know, I thought that's so crazy, no way. I set the goal to be 12,000. I thought I could just about manage that. But this time the goal I was creating a painting for Elon Musk at SpaceX. The reason being is that I decided to just email him. My brother was a massive fan. This is like 6 years ago, pre whatever Elon Musk is doing these days. And I was like, I just want to get him into the factory, but I'm English, so you have to be an American citizen. So in order to do all of that, you have to have special authorization. And stupid me, I didn't know who this guy was. I was just like, I'm just going to paint for him. So I just decided to send an email. And honestly, I didn't know his email. I guessed it. I guessed all of the different emails. I must have sent 50 emails to Gwen Shotwell. And then eventually she just responded and said, hey, this is super cool. I just need to find a place to put it. And that was my in. That's why I created the second Kickstarter, because I wanted to fund shipping it, because obviously producing and shipping it was very expensive. But we didn't make $12,000. At the end, we made $250,000 in that project, and that is what launched the whole career. I then now built a huge e-commerce. I have my own social media networks that are massive on every single platform. I've got email marketing, but all of this knowledge was caused because I went and actually did an unorthodox route to art. I learned how to do business. If you're going to be doing if you're an artist, you have to learn business. It is its own unique, beautiful art form. There's nothing worse. I feel like art is about projecting a message, whatever that message, whatever is important to you. I want to get it out there to people. And art, like business, is the best method and the best vehicle for that. But all people need to come together. So myself, I assembled a whole team to do all of this, which I learned making video games. I learned how to manage audiences and marketing and all of that kind of stuff. And that's actually how I met Dustin, how I met your mother. Yeah. We're doing that because, you know, when you do extraordinary things, it puts you in front of extraordinary people and you make these cool networks and you have these amazing ideas. There's not a single person on this earth that you cannot reach if you want to have an idea to create something, to do something. And it's best to go with a give than an ask. I just want to put a painting in your factory. And now I do all like private painting commissions for lots and lots of really, really like mind-blowing people. And like I remember handing over those paintings. I'd only been painting for 1.5 years at that stage. So I was still like, And I remember laughing and thinking like, is this real? Because I am some sort of, like, this is crazy. But again, like if you want to go out and create business and work with anyone, or you have any ideas, it's really possible to reach out to these people and make it happen. You just have to be a bit delusional to start off with.
Yeah, so we can take questions. I just want to point out that Kat's story is incredible. We took slightly different paths. You know, while she was selling $250,000 Kickstarters, this is me getting thrown out of Times Square by the counterterrorism police for a project we can talk a little bit more about in detail. But yeah, we've ended up very similar places doing a lot of the same mission, which honestly is very easy to state because at this point, for me at least, it's just about creating and sharing access to the universe. I build observatories. I've got observatories in California, Texas, a huge one in Alabama here, actually 2 in Alabama now, and these are just to give away access to space. That's the entire thing. So everything has kind of flipped upside down where it was business driven and it become very mission driven. And so like we definitely share that. It's 2 separate missions. Obviously Kat's is a lot more artistic than mine, but the intent is the same. And so anyway, before we go further in talking about what not to do, what not to do. Does anybody have any questions? We should jump in now.
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
First painting you did for Elon?
I did this gigantic 13-foot by 6.5-foot painting of NGC 3190, which great name. But if you remember, you know, like old school Apple Macs had that galaxy. It was that galaxy on a giant painting. And it had the little Tesla Roadster. Sorry. Oil painting, digital, and I do 3D, but I don't really do 3D much anymore, like graphics. And now astrophotography, because space is cool. Yeah.
Well, the oil's the big stuff, though, right?
I mean, more recently I've been doing astrophotography. One of the reasons I realized was that I was paid. So you might not realize this, but when you take a photograph of space, it's not just like click. You're capturing data for 10, 15, 20, 40 hours over multiple nights. And then you have to collaborate, like you have to collate all of this information. The process of even just putting it all together, there's a lot of artifacts and stuff that shouldn't be in there. So there's camera sensor noise, there's like weird stuff that moves, the atmosphere jiggles. You have to like use algorithms and that kind of stuff to extract all that, so all you've got is just the space. And then you have to interpret that data, you know, what color is hydrogen alpha? I don't know. Make it a nice color so that people can tell what it is, right? So we do all of that stuff, but that is an artwork in itself. And I had this moment because I was processing data for other people, because I've been doing Photoshop for maybe 25 years, which dates me a little bit. But I had this moment where someone else had painted an image that I'd processed, and it panged me because I was like, I mean, that was fine, they asked permission, but I was like, wow, that is an art form. Every single astrophoto you see from Hubble, from James Webb, all of these are like artworks, really, in truth. The way you can take the same data and someone can interpret it a million different ways. And for me, I was like, I have to learn how to photograph it. If I want to make a unique picture of space and I want to capture how I feel about it, I've got to start from ground up. And that's where Dustin came in.
Yeah, any other questions?
Have you seen the recent photos of the black hole in the Silver Galaxy?
I know, it's super cool, right? It's wild, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any photos of the black hole. Yeah. No, we do not.
Yeah, they used a radio telescope array that was like the size of.
Yeah, maybe we should
world.
step back one level. And astrophotography in general is just high-resolution images of deep space using telescopes and cameras. We connect cameras onto the back. It's not something. I get the question all the time: did you just create this in Photoshop? The answer is no. You could go to Best Buy, buy a camera, put it on the back of a telescope with an adapter, take a long exposure, and you can see this stuff that's out there. The problem is the human eye doesn't have settings adjustments. And so we'd be able to see this stuff ourselves. It's just we don't have control over aperture or shutter speed, like 1/30th to 1/60th of a second. That's how all of our eyes are working right now, right? And so that's all we get. So if you can't capture it in that time frame, you're not going to see it. And so with a camera, what we do instead is we say, take a long exposure, just capture light for the next 30 minutes. And then what you see is obviously a lot more light collected than what would have been in the human eye, which is much smaller than a telescope and can't collect light for as long. So that's how we're seeing what we're seeing, and that's how we're showing these high resolution images.
And some of them are quite big. You know, if you think about the Andromeda Galaxy, if it was as bright as the moon, it's 6 times the size of the moon. It's massive, actually, in the sky.
Well, from our relative perspective, it's a little bigger than the moon. And
yeah. It's like there are nebulae that you can't see because they're so faint, but they stretch all the way across the sky. I mean, if you just take a camera and shoot, you just point up and shoot for long enough, you're going to see something incredible.
Yeah. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look, you find something in space. It's just our eyes cannot capture enough light to see it. And so this is how we get around that, is using specialized equipment that actually tracks the exact rate the Earth moves in the opposite direction, so it freeze frames the sky. And then we can take really long exposures, stack those together to get signal. And in that signal, like this, if you turn it sideways, you might recognize this. This is called the Pleiades. It's the Subaru car logo. But those stars are up there, and if you take a long exposure, instead of it just looking like a cluster of stars, you can actually see all this reflection nebulae that's behind it, and you can get all these colors out of the sky. And so that's real color. It's not like something we just made and said, hey, look at this thing I drew in Photoshop. Stuff is really out there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But yeah, back to getting arrested in New York. Yeah, so there's been this really interesting thing, which for me, like I mentioned, that for me it was more philosophy driven. I really appreciate the scientific questions, like the how, what, when, where. Those are questions that we can answer with science. But the why question was always the one that was like nagging at me. It pulls at me, even now. It's the deep human questions that we're like, we have to ask ourselves at some point, and everyone who's ever walked the earth has. And it's really interesting because astronomy is the great connector, right? It's the thing that every human that's ever walked the earth has seen this stuff. They've seen the same moon you've seen. They've seen a lot of the same stars. They've seen all of these things, but they never saw it like we can now. It's only now that time and technology have converged. And I mean this literally, only now, like right now, in the last 5 years, that it's become accessible to people in this way. So you think about it, for the first time in all of human history, these small rooms, a handful of rooms like these, are people that know that this is even possible and possible for people to do and explore from your backyard, right? It's not something that people could have just done casually. Even 20 years ago, I mean, at the time, you know, this equipment was available to big institutions and, you know, universities, but it was very, very, very expensive. Now people are taking images like this. Kids are taking images like this, or not this one, but the space image, exploring the universe for what the price of a cell phone, something like that, you know? And so if you think, like, for the first time, if this is possible, then we have an obligation to make it accessible. And that's really where all of this came in, is that right now it is possible, but it's not accessible for two reasons. One, people don't know. They assume that it's going to be extremely intimidating and too challenging, or there's probably someone in this room right now, probably most people in this room are thinking, yeah, but I bet that's like really hard. Or it's not me, I'm not the type of person that's going to go out and do that. It's not me either. Like, I promise you, it's not me either. But as I fell in love with it, I realized there was no one step that was really difficult. It was just exploring the path in general, which made it, the doors start to open up. And as the equipment gets better, the cost comes down, the doors become even more and more accessible. What's happening now is it's going everywhere. But most people don't realize that there are opportunities not only for you to become explorers of the universe, but what about jobs? I mean, most people, at least I was in college, wondering, when am I going to make some money? You know, I was tired of being poor, and I was very, very poor. I pushed that limit pretty hard. And it's like, well, what do we do? What do we do next? Well, if you don't know that it's even possible, if you're not, you know, if you're not in front of the opportunities that exist to you, how can you take advantage of them? And so that's part of the idea, is how do we not only make it accessible so people can get the philosophical benefits of seeing that this space around them, this is your universe. You live in this space. It's not something separate from you. You live in this space. You go far enough, this is a place you can go, right? And so this stuff exists. It's there. And so recognizing that, bringing that in so that it's no longer out of bounds of our perspective, but instead expanding our perspective to reach to it, is step one. The second one is looking at, like, so what's changing? If space technology is coming this far, what else is changing? Well, everything. Elon Musk's kind of decided, we're going to start launching satellites all the time, and we're going to be really good at it, and they're always going to get there. And so we're going to have things like Starlink and all these new traffic lanes and all this stuff. So, like, just that one thing, if you just take that one thing, there's an entire industry created from it called space domain awareness. And these are jobs that people are going to be coming out of school, the people that know about it, the people that understand that space is the modern railroad. It's where all future funding is going. It's where even the bad things are going. It's where war is going. It's where a lot of things are going. But certainly the funding, when you look at it like that, the people that get ahead of it are the ones that are going to be there making all the money in the end. And these are very, very high-paying jobs. So the second piece of this is just understanding, like, what is the opportunity philosophically, you know, introspectively? But secondly, what is the opportunity financially? Is this a career path that somebody in this room has an interest in? Because if you don't know about it, you can't pursue it. And most people, I'm telling you, like, this group hearing this today means you've heard it more than most people. Most people will never hear about this, you know, and they don't know. They don't have anybody talking about it. It's not being talked about in a lot of universities. And it's because it's still right on the line of what's possible. And there's a catch-up period, right? And so that's the second piece, is just getting out in front and making sure that people understand what it is. And that's how I ended up in Times Square with Kat's husband, actually. I decided to fly out a bunch of my staff because we realized asking people, if you want to share telescopes, you want to share space with people, the first thing you do, your inclination is, let's get away from the city lights, right? They're a problem because you can't see through them. You get a telescope, all you're going to see is these street lamps and car lights and all this stuff. So their first inclination is, let's go somewhere else. Let's go to the middle of the desert and we'll set up telescopes and we'll invite everybody out. But now think about how creepy that invitation just sounded. Like, I'm going to go to the middle of the desert and ask you, a stranger, you want to come out to the middle of the desert with someone you don't know, right? And look through a telescope at something you don't understand and no one else is around. Like, that invitation is not going to go very far. So what we did instead is I decided to fly a bunch of my staff out to New York. We just said, if we can't bring people to the telescopes, we'll bring telescopes to people. I probably should have told New York I was doing that. But instead what we did was we all lined up on different corners of Times Square each holding a telescope or a telescope part. We all converged on the center of Times Square at the same time, and like the person like drops the tripod, the next person drops the mount, then drops the telescope, and within seconds we had these telescopes set up. And it was one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed. The conversation in Times Square changed instantly, and these huge lines formed behind the telescope. I mean, huge lines formed behind the telescopes. And now everything where you could hear the chatter as people were walking by in this ocean of people before, and it was just chaos, it was nonsense. Everything then changed to talk about space, everything, and instantaneously. And people were waiting to see, can we really see this from here? Can we really take a picture of a nebula from here? Can we see the moon through your telescope? But it changed the conversation completely, and we realized this sharing with people where they are is the path forward. It's not asking people to meet us where we are, because generally where we are is out in the middle of nowhere. Our telescopes are in remote locations. So starting that, Times Square slapped me on the wrist the first time. This was that slap. They told me, hey, don't do that again. But you can come back next year and do telescopes in Times Square the right way. And that's what we started doing before COVID kind of, changed things a little bit. But what started out as just kind of a crazy idea, and this is what generally happens, is you go out, you test these ideas, and you see how people will respond. The response was so overwhelming that even the city recognized it. And now it's allowed. Now people can set up telescopes in Times Square, even without telling them. They can get really quick one-day permits to do it, and it starts changing things, and it starts changing perspective. But without meeting people where they are, that never happens, right? And so that's kind of, sorry, I have a little cough here, but that's how this came to be and how these missions generally go. What else we got? Awesome. So this is just a little sidestep here. This is one of my images. This is what a lot of the images look like. But you're seeing gas and dust. This is actually the only nebula I know of that you can see with the human eye without a telescope. You can go outside, look at Orion. Everybody's heard of Orion's belt? So just below, there are 3 more stars. That middle star is not a star at all. It is this. This is the Orion Nebulae. And you can see there are little stars right in the center, the brightest part of the image. Those little stars there, and you see this, you often see this in these bright, colorful nebulae, which is like gas and dust and all this stuff here, emitting a lot of energy, giving off light. Those are baby stars. And so those will get ejected out of the nebula, have their own planets and things of their own, and this is how stars are born. These are stellar nurseries. But you can take pictures of these things from your backyard. This one quite literally was taken from my backyard. And you can get high resolution detail of what's actually going on there. But this stuff is, and there's another one, it's another stellar nursery, just reverse the colors. So this is not actually the right colors, but reverse the colors to show where is hydrogen, where is oxygen, where is sulfur in the image, which is why the colors are a little backwards. But this stuff is all out there. It's not made up. That structure is real, and these are places that new stars are being birthed into our universe. And you can see this stuff again from your backyard. And we're the only humans that have. All right? Any questions there?
Dustin, you say we can see this from our backyard.
Yep.
Not all of us have equipment.
Yep.
So if our students here want to do something like this, what would it cost for a student to buy something like this? B, could they use other telescopes for affordable prices?
Yep. Yeah, so a couple questions there. The first one is, like, what is the cost if you wanted to start doing this? Because the truth is, if you want to do something in a meaningful way regularly, having your own tools is the right thing to do. I'm not selling telescopes here or anything like that, so it's not me like saying, hey, go buy a scope from me. It's saying, if you want to do this and you want to do it regularly, then you need to probably invest in your own equipment to do that. That equipment used to be entry level, would have been like $12,000 to $15,000. Now, getting a really nice piece of equipment, I mean, $1,500 get you going.
Or even less. I think like if you used a star tracker and a DSLR, if you've already got a camera, you can put it on even if it's even if it's a kit lens, like a $400-500 for a Star Adventurer tracker will get you Orion. It won't fill the frame depending on the lens, but you can get it. I mean, I shot Andromeda literally. I've only just flown in from doing a workshop teaching people how to do it on this basic equipment, which is why I've got a nice t-shirt ton. But Orion can, will fill like a quarter of the screen sometimes, depending on the lens. But yeah, all you need is a tracker. Now the crazy thing is, everyone thinks, I want to shoot space. Telescope's the most important thing. Wrong. It's always the tracker. The more accurately you can track the sky, because obviously the Earth is rotating, you need to hold it there for a long while the Earth is rotating. The longer you can do that for, the better the image. So having a reasonable tracker is it. But all you need. You can literally get some of that stuff on Amazon, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get this stuff anywhere, and there are a ton of great sources out there. Like just Googling around astrophotography, you're going to find a lot of tools and videos that would show you how to do this. But the truth is, like starting in general. If you want to look through a telescope, there are a lot of clubs and places that you can find that. The other piece, and this one is something that's really front of mind for me and something I'm trying to create, is deeper access. So that's a conversation I'm willing to have with anyone in this room, is leveraging the stuff I've already built, including, I've got 23 telescope piers in Phoenix City, Alabama, that I'm literally building just to figure out what's the best way to share it in a way that doesn't cripple my time. The businesses end up owning me a lot more than I own them in a lot of cases, and so finding the time is generally the hard part, but there's a solution here. There's a way to navigate this to make sure that people have access. And those telescopes that I'm building are literally only there for sharing and creating images that then can be shared. So, it's a discussion I'm willing to have with anybody that's interested in how do we create a path forward with the telescopes that already exist that give free access to space as well. And maybe that's a conversation you and I should have on a deeper level too.
And also I would say, if you want to shoot it on your mobile phone, it is still possible. I know iPhones go up to 30 seconds as long as it's on a tripod, but you can even just put it on the floor and point it upwards. What you want is a dark night, so no moon if you can, preferably no clouds if you can, and try and just get a little bit further out of the city. If you look up something like, there's like dark sky maps, right? You log on, you say, what is a dark sky area? And it's graded in Bortles. Bortle is basically like how light polluted. When you go out in a city and you can't see any stars, and when you go out into a dark area, they're all there. What you want to do is try and get as far out as possible, but even with your phone, you can get a basic photograph of the Milky Way. It's not phenomenal. It's not like breathtaking in the sense of using a tracker and a camera, but it's accessible to everyone. Like everyone in this room pretty much could shoot it if they wanted to. It just takes from, where is it, like a 2-hour drive to get to super. Like a little drive, man. You can get there and you can shoot this stuff. You can still do it from your backyard though if the drive isn't that, but it's accessible to everyone. I didn't think that would be something that I could do, but it's something that everyone can do, including me, and I'm not that smart sometimes, so.
Yeah, I think the question is ultimately going back to the why. Ultimately you have to decide, does it even really matter? You have these opportunities, and maybe it is something you connect with, maybe it's not. It doesn't really matter one way or another, as long as something you find does, right? But I think that, in this case, what I've seen is the people that do look up generally find a way to push their visions further, because it changes your perspective. And it's not something we think about very often. And guys, I've been on just about every side of it. Like I said, I grew up without very much. I definitely had businesses fail. I've probably failed more than everyone in this room, potentially more than everyone in this room combined. I fail a lot. And so it's something that I've gotten extremely comfortable with, but the push, the moving forward is always there. Finding a way through is always there. And it's something that I think really, looking up and finding bigger perspectives and lenses to view life through is something that I wish somebody would have stopped me as a student and said, hey, we should probably talk about this for a second while you're shaping your vision. Because we look at our visions as something that are, once they're shaped, we're going to run with it. We're going to set a plan and we're going to go with that plan. But adaptation is literally the name of the game. The world is changing faster than ever.
Yeah, I would say also, not like how everyone wishes they knew and bought lots of Bitcoin before it got big. Space is a little bit like that in the sense of it is an industry now where billions of dollars are being funneled in right now. And there's very few people that know how to do it, but it's literally accessible to everyone. Like everybody here, even just through YouTube videos, could start to learn how to operate and use telescopes, even with basic equipment, and could get themselves jobs which are like $300,000, $400,000. It's incredible. It's kind of one of those things that's like, it's a blooming industry, and sooner or later we're going to see like lots and lots of people like incredible jobs, and it's like being able to be the first in something means that you can establish yourself and honestly make an incredible life for yourself, as well as, you know, doing something that's incredibly cool as well.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of the biggest names out there with businesses right now. It's where they're going. Steve Wozniak started Apple with Steve Jobs. Steve Wozniak's new company is called Privateer. And it's exactly what they do, is satellite tracking, what we were talking about earlier, SDA. That's what they're trying to do, is really draw the maps of those. You know, I am in a network. Generally, all of my friends are much smarter than I am, and it's something I'd recommend. Like honestly, it's like a superpower if you can get it. Just be around people that push you all the time, and that never let you kind of buy your own bullshit, right? That let you, that really understand that there's more that can be done, and that the vision should be bigger. If you're going to be trying something, you can fail at something small, so do something big, right? Like give everything you have to whatever your vision is. And so I'm in a group, my friend group, including Cat here, are people like that. These are people that have launched very, very large companies. He's got Our Sky up behind me. This started as a phone call from one of my business partners. His name's Alex Hawkinson. He has these visions. There are some people that start businesses and run businesses out of vision. Alex is a visionary. He started Smart Things. You've probably heard of it. I guarantee you a lot of you have it on your phone, whether you know you do or not. There's over 1 billion connected devices in the world. 1 in 7 people use what he created. Sold it to Samsung. I don't remember the exact number. You can Google it, but it was like $200 million to Samsung like a couple years later. Like these big visions, right? Grand visions. So Alex called, and he's one of these people that is like, hey, I know how we can solve this problem. Let's start working on this problem together. And that's what this became. And big visions recruit big talent, people that are drawn. Like I said, it's hard to build something small. It's hard to build something big. But which one is going to grab the talent that you really need if you're trying to do something impactful? If you have something that's huge, that's like this problem where, like he says, he wants to attack the world's biggest problems with the world's smartest people, it's like that's attractive to anybody that's got a super talent in whatever it is they're doing. And so it can actually be counterintuitive, but it can sometimes be easier to build the big thing because the people you draw in are that much more talented because they're drawn by it, right? And so, for instance, the person we recruited into the company to be the CEO was the lead engineer of SpaceX, worked directly for Elon. You know, he headed up all the engineering. I mean, they landed the first rocket in human history. You know, they built Starlink. They built all these things that humans had never done, but these are the types of mindsets that they have. And if everyone in your friend group starts thinking big like this, you can imagine how it's not a ton of steps to going from my position where I was in the grocery store trying to choose, do I buy the yogurt or the apple because I can't afford both, right? To, wow, the people around me are pushing me to think differently. And that difference in the way you think is ultimately where you're going to go. Like, where will we be when we get where we're going? The answer to that question is your perspective. Literally, the only answer to that question is your perspective. And you have more control over that perspective than you might think you do. I definitely did not know that for a very long time. And I was trying to turn pages as fast as I could in philosophy books to figure out where it was. I just couldn't find it there. For me, I found it looking through a telescope. I think for some of you, you may as well. Once you do, I promise you it changes. Something switches. But it may not be that. Maybe it's something else. But what I'm encouraging you to do is take ownership of your perspective and start looking for things that expand it in general. Your chance of success in going wherever it is you're going becomes much, much greater. Okay? All right. All right. Here we go. What are your thoughts on OpenAI? You want to take this? You want me to?
Yeah, like it's going to be a challenge, you know. The truth is, it's like I said earlier, it's like toothpaste. Like once it's out of the bottle, Then go back. There's no way you can put it back in. It's going to happen. So it's either adapt and survive, or ignore it and try and maybe get consumed by it. The truth is that it's going to be in everything. So I think that there's going to be lots of positive, there's going to be a lot of negative, but the truth is that the people that are going to get the most out of this are people that are going to embrace it, adopt it, and move forward with it. As an artist, it's kind of scary. Like, it's terrifying, man. They steal all your work and then reproduce it for cheaper, for zero, and all that money goes to a multi-billion-dollar company. But it's okay, because honestly, the reason why people buy artwork, because I'm not competing with Target. Basic, boring artwork. People buy my stuff because of the purpose, the meaning, and the reason. You don't get that from AI per se. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be useful. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be in everything. I advise everyone just to take note and just get involved with it, honestly. But just be responsible with it. I don't know what else to say. I don't think anybody knows where it's going to go. The truth is that every single job that you think you're going to do is going to be impacted by it in some way. So you just have to get ahead of the curve. That's why when I say, you want to get ahead of the curve doing telescope operations, like how massive this is going to be. Like when we talk about space domain awareness, we're talking like on the roads, you've got like road rules. You go this way, that go that way. There's none of that in space. Zippity zilch. They're going all different ways, and they're shooting faster than a speeding bullet, and just the fragment of a quarter will literally destroy another telescope, like a satellite. And these are billion-dollar satellites out there. So for me, part of the reason why I think space is important, perspective, creativity, and plus it's like super freaking cool as well, is the fact that if you want to get ahead of AI, being in an industry that is just growing and blooming is probably the best way to obviously embrace it, but also make sure that you're creating generational wealth for yourself and for your families as well. I don't know. It's a hard answer. It's a hard question.
I'm unyieldingly optimistic about most things. I feel like it's going to be great. I think there's going to be some challenges. Every intellectual revolution we've ever had as humans have come with challenges. They've always come with jobs lost and jobs created. I think the net always comes out positive, because the net of humanity, I think, is positive. And so we'll have problems, we'll have solutions. The solutions will follow the problems. It's going to be reactive for a while. But I don't think that building chain link fences on the beach to hold back the waves is a good idea. I think right now it's here to stay. And so the floodgates are open whether we like it or not. We need to embrace it and be the best versions of ourselves we can, utilizing this new tool that humanity has.
I don't have a question. I actually want to add to that. I think one of the things that that I continue to share with students is that everything is about to change. Everything that is happening now is not going to happen tomorrow because of AI. And now is the time where a new paradigm shift is happening, and you're a part of it. And you can absolutely grab it and run with it, because nothing has been established yet. There are new rules being created and new things being established. And so you're living in a remarkable time where you could absolutely take advantage of this. And really, that's one of the reasons why both Dustin and Kat had come.
Oh, BHAGs.
BHAGs. All right, so this is the first time, I think this is the first time you've heard of it, right? So we do a lot of planning together. We've got different things we're trying to do, but I hit him I was on the run, trying to make the plan on the phone. I was running through an airport, and I was like, just figure out the BHAGs, man, figure out the BHAGs. And those are the big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And that's what we were trying to set for ourselves, is like, what is it we're going to do that at the end of it we get to call this success? Because we're all doing things. And I think if you're honest with yourself, and probably, I can say this for sure about myself even right now in this moment, is like if we're honest with ourselves about what we're doing, what we're applying our time to, and what success actually looks like, they're probably not all perfectly aligned. We probably spend a lot of our time doing things that in the end, if we were going to be flipping the quarter into the wishing well saying, this is the life I want, it's probably not aligned with what that end goal would be, right? But the more we consider what's the thing that's so difficult that would be the life story, right, which we're writing right now. You chose to write one page of it, or at least one paragraph of it, by coming here today. And so you're sitting here, and that paragraph is being written every moment of time that passes. You're writing your life story. And so the question is, are you writing the life story that you'd want to read? And for me, in a lot of cases, it wasn't. So I started making BHAGs, which was like, I'm going to put these goals on paper. I'm going to put these goals. I'm going to know where I want to be when I get where I'm going. And I'm going to try to do the big thing. Because otherwise, like, I'm not even the main character in my own story. Right? It's super intense and scary and kind of sad. And I spend a lot of time that way. And it's easy to go back to that. We take a lot of hits. The world is a challenging place. He's saying the world is changing. You are going to experience more rapid evolution than any of us did. You're going to continue to experience it. It's going to be harder for you in so many ways than it ever was for us. You know, even social media makes it that way. Everything you do now is tracked forever. Everything has a record, right? We didn't necessarily have that going through school, especially early school. But now things are changing, whether you like it or not. And so I think getting on the front end, understanding the situation, and then leveraging the things that balance that. Because things are going to be a lot harder in a lot of respects. It's going to be more competitive. But you also have more tools. You have more ways to grow quickly. I promise you, like, she was saying, you know, neither of us are that smart. And it's true. Like, probably most people in this room are a lot smarter than us, because most of the kids I meet, I'm just like, how does a kid at that age know that? You know, I go talk to grade schoolers, I'm like, they are all smarter than we are now. And it's because they have technology. It's because they have access to information in a way that we didn't. But I think if you don't leverage that, then you're accepting the new challenge without accepting the benefit of the technology that exists. Because whether you're scared of it or you just don't want to deal with it, whatever, now you're fighting a bigger challenge with less tools. So you kind of have to force yourself to accept it. Cool. Yeah, that was me on a stage, and I gave a TED Talk, scariest experience in my life. Highly recommend it. Takes 4 months to do if you want to do it. You work with coaches and speakers, and they pick apart everything you do. It's not at all what I thought. If anybody here fans of TED Talks? Anybody? Yeah, I love them. I still love them. I think sharing ideas in that format is amazing. But it's for anyone that has an interest in eventually going down that road, it's not what it looks like on the outside. It's very, very curated, and they make sure that every line that you're saying actually pushes your mission forward. It's a beautiful experience, but also the most intimidating. I don't do many formal anything. This is me dressed up, you know. So was that, by the way. But yeah, that was there anything specific you wanted me to go into on that? No. Okay, cool.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Can I meet with you after this?
Of course. Yeah, I'm going to stick around. I'll stick around as long as we need to, and we can talk whatever. So, like I said, I want to have the conversation now that I wish someone would have had when I was in your seat. That's really all this is.
Yeah, I just want to end on whatever your goal is. If it doesn't terrify you a little bit, and I know this is so, like, everyone says this, but your end goal really has to be just that bigger bit out of reach. If it is so mundane, it is so easy to just go by the wayside, like, it should terrify you. It should be something that you're like, yeah, it's almost unobtainable, because you are capable of that. The thought and your process of how you get there is all about, like, having that end goal be hard enough that you actually strive, for sure.
This all really should be, I mean, it should all be cooperative. You know, in a certain regard, every day, you have to pass the baton to the next person that's going to take it. But you shouldn't do that. And in some industries, astrophotography specifically is like very guarded. Everybody wants their secrets of how you're processing images. I'm not going to share that because then you can be better than me. And it's just the reverse of what reality is. This is a huge industry. These are huge opportunities. Even if you spent your whole life doing it, you're not going to capture the entire market. You never will. You won't capture 1% of it because it's just too big. It's massive. The opportunities are huge, which means we should cooperate. We should pass the baton, not to prove to the next person that it was heavy, but so that they can take it further than we ever did, right? And that's really what this should be. And so that's, yes, we can absolutely talk after this. Anybody that wants to talk, like I said, I'll stick around as long as we need to. We can talk about it, but I just want to see, like, whoever's going to push in whichever direction, go further than we are, you know. And I'm going to push hard, so it's going to be a challenge, but I think that you can absolutely do it.
When you said that, like, when you looked at a telescope, you see like supply chain for you.
Yeah.
Is there, like, when you said you wanted to do astrophotography, is there much support in that? Like,
No.
all around you?
No, not at all. Everybody, including my family, thought, you're gonna be destitute. Like, what are you doing? You have this job that, I mean, I had a lot of rough years. I was kind of a crazy kid, you know. I left school my first semester instead of taking finals and went to Ireland to live with no money for 10 days, sleeping in bushes. I was one of those kids, you know? And so, like, I was always trying to chase life experience and don't do that, by the way. I learned nothing except what it was like to freeze. It was so cold and scary. So don't do that. But no, in many of these cases, like when Kat talks about like taking the leap, it really is a leap. Like you have to decide, what does your story look like? Like where do you want to end up? And it's a hard thing to do, and it sounds so cliche. Even when I say it, I kind of like I can sense that it just doesn't come off the way I mean it. But the truth is, like, you have to kind of take the leap. You have to. What did Vonnegut say? We have to constantly be jumping off cliffs and learning to fly on the way down. Like that's the truth. Like you do. And so for me, everybody told me I was crazy. They were 100% right. They were looking out for my best interest. I've created the best life I've ever had from doing it.
Yeah, and I would also say like whatever's going on internally is like honestly one of the biggest things as well. Like outside of all the external voices is like working with the one inside. And just, you know, you just have to go for it, man. Like you can become good at literally anything. I mean, there's people that are professional yo-yoers that get paid millions of dollars. So like, but it's true. It's like you get good at anything, you get good enough at it, you'll get paid for it. So it might as well be something that you love than something that you hate. It might be something that fulfills you and is like, wow, this is like amazing. One of my favorite things is this story about Tony Hawk, pro skateboarder, you know, guy. You know, anyway, so he was like rolling around and he had this meeting with Lance Armstrong, the cyclist that was obviously now disgraced, but back in the day, he was doing a lot of stuff for cancer because he'd been a cancer survivor. And they had this meeting, right? And what happened was he said like, man, you know, you're doing all this stuff for kids. He was like sending kids with cancer to like hospitals, making sure that all their families are looked after. And he's like, I'm just the guy that rolls around, you know, and like, what am I, you know? And he said, look, the truth is that you have encouraged, like the number one cause for cancer in kids is lack of exercise and obesity. And he's like, you single-handedly have helped more kids avoid having cancer than I will ever help. And all of a sudden, Tony Hawk went from a guy that was just rolling around on a board with wheels to like, man, I'm like actually helping generational people get outside, exercise, do stuff. So what you have to realize is that even what you love, even if it is obscure, like rolling around on a board and just enjoying the motion, is that by being passionate and encouraging people to do stuff, you have no idea the amount of positive impact you can have with that. So, you know, chase that dream because no one else is going to give you permission.
Yeah.
We are on the 4 o'clock hour. I want to thank everyone for your company and for listening to these two. And I hope that the words that you heard today will resonate with you tomorrow. And thank you again. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Dustin, for coming. Should we give them a round of applause?